Hey, good morning, everybody. So we continue from 8b, 6 lines up from the bottom. Gufa, we said before, Amar B'Yachid. Shlamim sheshchatam behechal kasheri. A shlamim sacrifice that you did the shlita in the sanctuary itself. Usually it was done outside the sanctuary in the Azara. Um, it's fine, it's valid. Shanamar ushchato pasach al moed, because it says about the shlamim, you should do the shlita at the entrance to the ohel moed. So if it's good outside the ohel moed is equivalent to the heichal, then certainly it should be good inside. In other words, it's even closer to God, as it were. Like the place being more holy should not disqualify the sacrifice. They say, but they asked. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer, Minayin sheim hikifu odei kachavim esu azara. If if they're the Mikdash, were under attack, it was besieged by idol worshippers. So the Kohanim, they can't stay outside the Azara, they'll be killed. So they can retreat and take refuge in the in the Heichal, and they can eat the kachim there. Talmud Lomar, how do you know that? Talmud Lomar, because the Torah says, you could eat it in the Kodesh HaKodashim. Okay, so we see that the although this is for eating, as the Gemara will object, but we see that the sacrifice does not become disqualified from eating in the mikdash, in the heichal. So what do I need the pasuk for? According to Rabbi Yochanan, who said, "Lema b'chatzar o moed yachua." Use that pasuk. What do you need another pasuk to tell you this? Because we already have a pasuk according to Rabbi Yochanan. You can eat it in the chatzar o moed, and he does the not a kal v'chomer exactly, but loyei tafel chamer meikar. That he logically derives that the heichal must also be good for the shchita. Gemara says, there's a difference. Avoda, Rabbi Yochanan is talking about avoda, right? Like if you're doing service to God, what is a sacrifice? In a sense, it's a service to God. So if you're closer to God than he commanded to do this avoda, that's fine. It makes sense in the context. I'm reading so we can use that logic. But what about eating the sacrifices? Could be a different thing. But you could say, with the avodah, you could say the closer you get, the better. But with the eating, you could say a servant should not be eating in the dining room. A servant should be eating in the kitchen. So if you're told to eat in the kitchen, don't eat in the dining room. So Tama the cost of cross. So therefore, the pasuk says, Rabbi Yochanan brings another pasuk that says, sorry. With the eating, the Torah brings another pasuk, but it's okay to eat in the dining room. But if it hadn't written that, we wouldn't say about eating, then it's fine to eat in the dining room. If you're told to eat in the kitchen, you eat in the kitchen. When it comes to the avodah, if you're told to daven, you can daven outside the shul, you can daven inside the shul. It's even perhaps even better. Okay, Itmar. We have another machlokas we're going to bring here. We said that if it was said that if you mix, so with the milcha you mix the oil with the flour, if you do that outside the azara, Rabbi Yochanan, Rish Lakish, we have machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish if that's okay to do the beginning of the mincha, mixing the oil with the flour outside the azar. Rish Lakish, why does Rish Lakish say it's okay to receive? It says you pour the oil on the flour and you put the incense in the mixture, and then the hadar, and then it says then you bring it to the kohanim and they take the handful for the mizbeach. So when do you give it to the kohen? After you mix it, right? Or of course the kohen could do it too, I suppose, but it's the critical point at which the kohen has to take over is after the mixing of the oil and the flour. So limed al yitziko, Lima also teaches you about the pouring of the oil and the mixing. Shekshir bizarre that can be done with a non-Kohen. What does it have to do with where you can do it? So we're making an equivalence that okay, if it doesn't need to be done by a Kohen, must be that says Rish Lakish must be that it doesn't need to be in the Azara. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it's no good. Where do you do this mixing? In one of the clay shards, right? In one of the vessels of the mikdash. The heated kahuna labaya, so I agree, it doesn't need a kohen. So if it needs to be done in clay shards, that indicates that it's an activity that is part of the sanctified procedure, and therefore it has to be done. I derive, or it figures, it makes sense that it has to be done inside the Ezra. Tiny class of Rabbi Yochanan will support Rabbi Yochanan. Bilal Azar Shera. If a non-Kohen does the mixing, it's valid. Chutz l'chomas Azar Psula. But if it's done outside the Azar, it's possible. So it's black, it's an open check case. This price clearly supports Rabbi Yochanan. So the understanding here is that Rabbi Yochanan is correct. You cannot do the mixing outside of the Azar. We have another statement. What happens if before you do the kamitza, before the coin takes the fistful for the mizbeach, some of the flour goes missing? Okay. Okay, so the coin can, or the owner can go and get some more flour, and however much is missing, he supplements and brings it up to the right measure. Rish Lakish says no. Why? Rish Lakish says you can fill it up, refill the flour kamitza kavala, because this is kodem kamitza. We're talking about before the Kohen takes the fistful. That's what gives it. That's what makes it. That's the essential step that makes it a mincha. So if he hasn't done that yet, so fine, bring more flour. You need how much flour you need? I forget. Uh, Whatever the measure is, you bring this. Until the kamitza is done, you can keep substituting flour if some goes missing. Rish Lakish says no. Because once you put it in mikli sharis, then it becomes a mincha. That's what makes it, an official mincha. And then once some has gone missing, you can't replace part of the mincha that has become sanctified. What do you do then? We'll see in a minute. Asa Yochanan challenges Rish Lakish. Hasar halog iman shloyata. What about the oil? Okay, if you're missing some of the oil goes missing. If it's before the mixing with the flour, yimalenu. So then you can replace it. And this was in a cliche. So doesn't that disprove Rish Lakish? Yes, it does. It disproves Rish Lakish. So again, Rabbi Yochanan comes out on top here. Excuse me. Idmar, the third thing between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, Shiraim shechosr ben kmitza lachtar. What about the leftover of the mincha? In other words, you take the fistful, you've already done that, and then from the flour that's still in the klishari, some goes missing. But in other words, before, so Ben Kmitza Lachtar, the Kohen's already taken the fistful, but he hasn't yet put it on the mizbeach. Rabbi Yochanan Matir Kohen Salam. Rabbi Yochanan says, okay, so some went missing of the remaining flour, but the Kohen's already done the kometz, he's already taken the fistful, so he should continue and put it on the mizbeach. Rish Lakish Ein Matir Kohen Salam. Lakish says no, it's now invalid. Now, we're going to refer to another machlokas of Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yeshua. So, according to Rabbi Eliezer, they're not arguing. We'll see in a second what Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua say. Keep legally with Rabbi Yeshua. when they disagree according to the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. It's not. What is this about? Mishnah says, "Nit mushi around nisrifushi reha avdushi reha." What happens if the flour that's left after you take the kmitza became tamei, or it got burned, or it got lost? Kaminas Rabbi Eliezer keshela. According to, is an unusual lashon, but according to the measure of Rabbi Eliezer, the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, the mincha is still good. Kaminas Rabbi Yeshua, so Rabbi Yeshua says no. Manda pasal to Rabbi Yeshua. So now, turning back to Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, if uh, so Manda pasal to Rabbi Yeshua, the one that's Reish Lakish, who says that this mincha is pasul, who says that you can't, that if some of it went missing, you can't replenish it. That he holds like Rabbi Yeshua. Or note that Rabbi Yeshua is talking about if everything went missing. Okay, and we're trying to apply that to if some of it went missing. So Mandamachshir, Rabbi Yochanan, who says that if some of it went missing, it's okay. He says, when does Rabbi Yeshua say it's not valid anymore? Everything was lost, right? Everything got burnt. Everything became tamei. But if some of it, in our case, so in the case I'm arguing about with Reish Lakish, if some of it is still there and is still kosher, then then it's okay. I feel Rabbi Yeshua, even Rabbi Yeshua, who says if it's all missing or if it's all invalid, then the mincha can't be. You can't continue with the mincha; it's invalid. But if only some of it is missing, then Rabbi Yeshua would say it's okay. Netanya, and what's Rabbi Yeshua's, Rabbi Yochanan proves, brings a source for his opinion. Netanya, Rabbi Bryce, Rabbi Yeshua Omer, Kol Hazvachim Shel Torah, all of the sacrifices in the Torah. Shenishtayer mehem kazayis basar kazayis chelav. If it only, if it all got lost or burnt or whatever, except for you still have a kazayis of meat or chelav or fat. Zarik Hadam, you can go ahead and do the Zrikas Hadam. In other words, you can continue with the carbon because some of it some of the animal is still there. But if it's less than the kazayis that you have left over of the animal, in the Zarik Hadam, you can't continue with the avodah. But if it's an ola, afilu kachatzi zayis basar v'chatzi zayis chelav, Zarik Hadam. Even if you only have, less than the kazayas of meat or chaylev, then you can still continue with the zrikas of nesha ba'ola kula kali, because an ola gets completely burnt on the mizbeach. So if you have, what it's saying is, if you have half a kazayas of meat and half a kazayas of chaylev, since it all gets burned together anyway, so that combines to a kazayas. And what about in the case of the mincha? Even though you have the whole mincha is still there, lo yizrok. You can't do rikas adam. So Gemara says immediately, what mincha? What are you talking about? Rikas adam. There's no dam. There's no blood. It's flour and oil and incense. Our Papa says minchas nesachim. No, we're talking about the mincha that comes with a carbon, with an animal carbon, meaning that if the mincha is if you have a problem with the mincha, then you can't continue with the carbon. I might have said, since the mincha.
What's the zrika here?
The zrika is the zrika of the blood of the animals. This is a
but there's no zrika with the mincha, right?
Yeah, but what Papa is explaining is that we're talking about a mincha that comes as every animal korban comes with a mincha. We call that minchas nesachim.
Right.
Okay, so you can't continue. You can continue with the mincha even if. So the blood that's being referred to here is the blood of the animal sacrifice that the mincha is coming along with. Okay, Salkadata says, since this mincha is coming together with the animal korban, treat it the same as the animal. So if there is, in other words, you've lost all the meat, you've lost all the chalev, but you still have the mincha. So maybe that should qualify, or maybe we should say that that is part of the animal carbon. The mincha is as if it's a part of the animal carbon. So if you still have some mincha left, then you can continue with the zrika sadam of the animal. You see, you get it?
You don't have an animal though.
No, but you still have the blood. You've done the shechita. You've got the blood in the klisharis, and you're ready to do the zrika, and then poof, the animal disappears. It's the meat gets burned, or maybe it becomes tameh or whatever. Okay, but you still have the blood. Should you continue with the zrika? So what we're saying here is, well, it depends. If you have any of the animal left, is what we dealt with already, then yes. If you don't have any of the animal left, but you still have the mincha, then that's enough to allow you to proceed with the zrika sadam. Huh? So Kamash
The
Malone.
mincha from that animal that came with that animal.
Exactly. Yes. So Kamash
Can't bring
Malone.
another mincha. If you lost half the most of.
No, because you've already dedicated this particular mincha
Right.
as to be part of this zeva, to be part of this animal carbon. So Kamash Malone. So what the Bryce is telling us that no, even having the mincha does not actually allow you. I might have thought you could still do the zrika sadam if you still have the mincha. No, it's not enough. You actually have to have some of the animal left in order to do the zrika sadam. Okay. Okay, so what do we see then? And this was all according to Rabbi Yeshua, that and this brisa states that Rabbi Yeshua's opinion is if some of the meat or the chalev is still left over, still available, then you continue with this rikas adam. So why don't you say the same thing? So you should say the same thing about any kind of mincha, right? The principle that if there's some left, you can continue with the avoda should apply to the mincha as well. So it seems like Rabbi Yeshua is saying in this brisa that that Rabbi Yochanan's interpretation of Rabbi Yeshua is correct, right? That if some of the mincha is left, you can continue with the avoda of the mincha, and it's against Reish Lakish. So the Gemara answers, "Man apostle, what about Reish Lakish? How do you explain that? Shani hacha." It's different in the brisa we just quoted. There's a distinction here. Because the Torah says the Kohen takes from the mincha its azkara, so the comments, right, the fistful, and vikir mizbecha and burns it on the mizbeach. Ha mincha, by using the word ve'erim hakohen min hamincha ad isul kula mincha lo yaktir. It somehow saying ha mincha means like the entire mincha. It's treated as a unit. If you don't have the whole thing, then don't burn it on the mizbeach. So because of this pasuk, you could say that in the case of an animal sacrifice, Rabbi Yeshua would say that if only some meat is left, it's fine. Right, but in the case of a mincha, the Torah tells you ha mincha, that it's treated as a unit. If you don't have the whole mincha, then you can't proceed. And idach, what about Rabbi Yochanan? Min ha mincha, mincha shahai sakvar. Okay, if it just said ha mincha, and Rabbi Yochanan said, I would agree with you. It says min ha mincha, from the mincha. It means a mincha that was already there when you did the kmitza. So it's not entirely clear to me how he interprets the words to mean this, but so even if whatever is left, whatever you still have of the mincha is, you still have some, then you can continue with the avoda of the comments. It just has to have been complete when you did the comments, but if it becomes deficient afterwards, then mincha implies that it's still okay.
We're not talking about the mincha with the remnant of the meat now, are we?
Correct.
We're talking about
correct.
The mincha offering by itself.
Correct.
So when would this apply? If a person wasn't sacrificing any meat?
Oh, you could bring as a donation, for example. You could say, I want to bring a mincha. Nothing to do with any animal sacrifice. That's perfectly valid. That's what the Torah talks about at the beginning of Vayikra.
Right. So he could. Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking. So they could bring. So he has to bring the whole mincha. If a few of a few grains of the mincha disappear, fall out of the hands, and it wouldn't be valid according to this opinion.
Right. That's exactly what they're arguing about, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Yes. Is if you lost some, is it valid or not? Is the rest of it valid or not?
I would
Okay.
think that you would have 95, 80, 98%. It would be, but apparently that's the machloek.
Yeah, you could think of it as kind of as a mug. Maybe it's incomplete. Okay, well, that's exactly what the point of contention is between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Ace Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. So Rabbi Yochanan challenges Reish Lakish. There's another brisa. Anshlo perka nifras. You have the lechem hapanim, right? This is the bread that was put on the shulchan every week. So if the loaf of bread was cut or was broken before you remove it. So the way the procedure was, I think every Shabbos they would have a fresh fresh loaves of bread put on the shulchan, and they would remove the last week's loaves. Um, so now, so if it's still on the shulchan, you haven't taken away the old one, and it broke. And we're understanding this to mean it broke and some of it got lost. Okay, the wind blew it away, or I don't know what happened. A bird came down and ate it.
Wasn't that one of the miracles? I thought the bread didn't break. They separated, and there was a certain group of Kohanim that knew how to remove it from the mold that was in, and so it didn't.
Well, that was the baking, I think. Like, how was it baked in such a way? But then once you put it on the shulchan, it just sat there until it was removed the next week. I don't think there was anything special about like placing it on the shulchan or removing it from the shulchan.
Oh,
It
it
was the
could be.
baking of it. It was the
Right.
baking
So
that was tricky.
right. So then they remove it from the special pan so it didn't break, and it never broke. They group certain people were
Right.
designated. They knew how to do it exactly. They were there. These people were
Yeah.
very skilled in that.
Right. But that was in the baking
Oh,
process,
right.
I
Okay.
believe. Um, okay, so what happens? Halachem pasul vein makdir olav sapozichin. Then, if before it was removed from the shulchan, it got you lost some of it. Then it invalidates everything. You can't. Then it's no longer valid, and you can't. Um, Part of the procedure was burning some incense. Um, Bazichin are actually spoons, but it means a spoonful of incense. Um, but once you take it away, take it off the shulchan, and then you lost it. Okay, so the bread is no good; it can't be eaten by the kohen anymore. But the levana still gets to be burned on the mizbeach. Lo perka mamish doesn't mean that the bread was actually removed. When it came time to remove the bread, even though it hadn't been removed. So even if then in my scenario a bird flies in and pecks away at it and eats some of it, even though it's still on the shulchan, but since the time has come for it to be removed, it's already Shabbos morning. Then you can proceed with the Levon. Okay, so what does it have to do with us?
What do you do with the Lavona then? Say that again.
Uh,
Proceed with what?
with burning the Levon on the Mizbeach.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so all right, so isn't this similar to the case of the Mincha, right? Like some of it goes missing, and this brisa says you can proceed with the Levana, right? So doesn't that support Rabbi Yochanan? Rabbi Yochanan, in the case of the mincha, he says similar thing, right? That some of it's gone missing, but you already did the kmitza, then you can continue. Reish Lakish says no. So how does he explain the difference between the lechem hapanim and the mincha? Amalei, he could answer Hamani. Okay, that brisa that you're quoting, in fact, is according to the shita of Rabbi Eliezer. And Rabbi Eliezer, as we saw, says that even if you've lost everything, in the mincha, it's still the comments is still valid. Amalei, so Rabbi Yochanan would say, "Ana minalach mishnah shlema." What are you talking about? I quoted you a whole mishnah, and it doesn't say who, it doesn't attribute it to anyone. It doesn't attribute it to Rabbi Eliezer or anyone else, and it doesn't note any contrary opinions. The Amrli to Rabbi Eliezer, and you want to say that this Mishnah is Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer, if that were so, Ma'ir Nifras. And why would the Mishnah say that the bread broke? Afilu sarah, if you have a name machshir. So we've been interpreting nifras that it broke, that some of it got lost. But Rabbi Yochanan points out, um, well, that's not actually what it says. It doesn't say some went missing. It says it broke. Um, um, so why specify that? Like you could be more expansive. Like if you're right, Reish Lakish, and if this mission is according to Rabbi Eliezer, like don't limit yourself by saying the bread broke, saying the bread disappeared, right? The bread became tamei, the bread became was burned or whatever. Um, so, he's casting doubt on this idea. Ishtik and Rish Lakish has nothing to say. But my Shasak, the Gemara says, wait, Rish Lakish could answer back. Lamely, he could say, see, Burshana, Lechem Apanim is different than a mincha, because a mincha, we could be talking about a private mincha, an individual that wants to bring a mincha, and the Lechem Apanim is a communal offering. And you know what we know about communal offerings? Even if it becomes tamei, it's still okay, right? A carbon sibur can be done betuma. So Ishtri Navi Chaseros. So maybe that indicates that okay, lechem apanim. Since it's a carbon sibur, maybe if only some of it is there, it's still valid. So Reish Lakish could say, well, "You're trying to prove me from lechem apanim." Yeah, sure, lechem apanim is still valid if some of it's missing. That doesn't apply to a private mincha. Amar Rav Baravas, or Rav Baravas says, Zosameris, because Rish Lakish did not retort this, Hachisaron Kival Mumdame. It teaches you that how do you understand a missing part of a carbon? It's like a balmum, like having a blemish. Vein balmum b'tzibur. And guess what? We have leniencies about a carbon tzibur, like tuma, but we don't apply a leniency of balmum. A balmum is still invalid for a carbon sibor, and so that which applies also to an individual's offering. So therefore, Rish Lakish can't make a distinction between lechem apanim, between the lechem apanim and a mincha here, because they are subject to the same rules. Yasser Rav Papa Kamal Hashmata. Rav Papa was teaching all this. Amarle, Rabbi Yosef Marshamil Rav Papa. So Rabbi Yosef said to him, Mila Skina Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish b'minchas ha'omer. B'tziburi. Wait a minute. Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, they didn't say a private mincha, right? They said a mincha. And guess what? There's a mincha that is a carbon sibur, for example, the omer, right? That's the omer sacrifice that we bring on the second day of Pesach.
Pesach.
Yeah, is a carbon sibur, upligi. So presumably they're arguing about that too, because they didn't say a private mincha; they said any mincha, right? Any mincha includes this carbon sibur. So that's why Reish Lakish couldn't answer that we treat a carbon sibur differently, the lachem apanim differently, because his dispute with Rabbi Yochanan, he's also talking about the carbon sibur, and he's including the omer, and the omer is certainly a parallel case to the lechem apanim. Amar of Malkia. Okay, fine. So Amar of Malkia says Tanachada misalta. We have one brisa that says that you take from the solas, from the flour. Shim chasra kol shu psula. So that implies that that you have to have all the flour, a full measure of flour. Mishamna, and it says from the oil. Shim chasra kol shu basal. You have to have the full measure of oil. So if you lost some, it's no good. But Tanya Ida, but we have another brisa, hamaseres minamin yochu what's left over from the notag after you do the kmitza, that's for the kohanim. So that implies that a mincha that became that some went missing, or that some of the comments went missing, or not all of the or the levana hadn't been burned. So that doesn't. So Hanoseres Min Amincha Yoklu Aron doesn't apply to that. Now, Trey Cry Bachaseros Lamali. Why do you need the first two words, Misalta Umishamna? Um, um, a second.
Two pasukim,
Yeah,
right?
why do you need two psukim? Yes, why do you need the Misalta Mishamna and Hanoseres Min Amincha? Lav hadla mincha shechasra kana kmitza. Isn't it the case that one pasuk is for a mincha that became deficient before the kmitza, b'chad l'shirayim shechasra ben kmitza l'haktara, and the other pasuk would refer to the flour, the remaining flour that some went missing after the kmitza and before the burning of the comments on the mizbeach. Which you've said, Rabbi Yochanan b'tarbayu. And that is against Rabbi Yochanan, right? Because it seems here from this price that it's possible. If it became, if you lost some of the flour before the, Rabbi Yochanan said if you lost some of the flour before the comets, um, is
It's okay.
is okay. Yeah. So where I says, well, not so. That's not why we need two psukim. You know why we need two psukim? One pasuk is for a mincha that you lost some of it before the kmitza was taken. As we said before, you could bring from home. You could refill the flour if the komets hadn't been taken yet. You can replenish it. Be low, but if not, if you didn't do that, then it's no good. And the other pasuk is for the leftover flour that after the kmitza, but before it was the komets was burned on the mizbeach, and even though you burn it, is osam shirayim asurim lachila. So it's valid. The mincha is a valid mincha, like you've done the avoda. Um, However, you can't eat the remainder. And here's a supporting idea. They ask, according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says that you can continue with the some of the flour went missing. You should continue with the kmitza and with the burning of it on the mizbeach. Osan shirayim, that leftover, mahi bachila, can you eat the 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 flour that was left after the kmitza? Someone missing, sure, you can do the avoda, but can you eat the flour? Can the kohanim eat the flour? Amar Zira says, Amar Krab b'hanoseres. What's left over, v'lo hanoseres, mean hanoseres. In other words, by saying hanoseres min amincha yochlu of the leftover after the kmitza they get to eat. So leftover is treated as a unit. And if some of the leftover goes missing, that's like the leftover of the leftover, and that's not allowed to be eaten anymore. Rabbi Yanai says, min ha-mincha, hanoseres min ha-mincha, what's left over from the mincha. Mincha shahisa it's talking about the mincha that was complete when you did the kmitza. If it later became, some of it got lost, it's still okay to eat. Okay, and that's so.
But you've already used it. But he's already used that mincha, though, right? He's already.
Yeah. So what's your question?
So why would there be even a question whether he could eat it or not?
Well, because maybe the mincha is valid, but you're still not allowed to eat it. So in other
Why
words,
would that be?
why would that be? Because some went missing. So the question is, how bad is it that some went missing? So Reish Lakish would say it's so bad that you can't even continue with the procedure. You can't, and the mincha is not complete. If somebody, and you would still be on the hook to bring another one. If you made a nether, let's say, that you're going to bring a mincha, then this doesn't count. This doesn't work.
Even
You have
after
to
it's
bring
already
another one.
offered?
No, Reish Lakish would say you can't even offer it, right? Because some went missing before you burned it on the mizbeach. So cancel. It's no longer valid. Start again from the beginning.
Right.
Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it's fine. Go ahead and continue the avodah. Burn the komets on the mizbeach. However, maybe you can't eat what's left over, but it still counts as a mincha. So
Uh,
Rabbi Yochanan would say, Well,
But if it's
it's
already burned, what's there left to eat?
no, no, no. The what gets burned, the fistful that the coin. So what happened? Remember, the procedure of a mincha is you take the full measure of flour and oil and incense, mix them together, and then the coin takes a fistful and puts it on the mizbeach, and what's left in the bowl is for the kohanim to eat.
Oh, right.
So only the kometz gets burned on the mizbeach.
So what are we saying is missing here that Rabbi Yochanan would say you couldn't, perhaps couldn't eat it?
Okay, the Kohen takes the fistful out of the bowl. He's getting ready to put it on the Mizbeach. And then what's left in the bowl, some goes missing. That's what we're
Oh,
talking about. So he still has the komets. What should he do with it? So Rabbi Yochanan says, go ahead, burn it on the Mizbeach. Can you eat what's left in the bowl? So that's subject to the mapotas that we just saw, Regana and Zir.
so we're talking about
Maybe
what's
yes,
left in the
maybe no.
bowl. What's
Yes,
left in the
exactly.
bowl?
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So, comments are small. The Mishnah said use your left hand to do the kmitza, right? To take the fistful out of the bowl, you do it with your left. Sorry, you use your right hand. If comments are small, possible. If you use your left hand, it's invalid. Where do we get that from? Amr b'zera, Diamar Kra, Vayakriv Zamincha, Vayamalecha Pomimena. Talking about the miluim, right? The first, the dedication of the Mishnah in the desert. So Aaron takes the mincha and he filled his palm, his hand with it. It doesn't say left or right. I don't know. Should he use his left hand or his right hand for the mincha? So we're going to try to figure this out from the procedure for mitzvah. Okay, in the mitzvah it specifies the Kohen takes um, from the oil and um, uh, he puts it on his left hand. Okay, and here it says specifically left hand. Kan small. So here it's the left hand. So where are we going to derive from that? If it hadn't said left hand, I would have thought right hand. Right. So what does plain kaf mean? Plain, if it just says your hand, must mean your right hand. Oh, the mitzvah is different. That's why it says left hand. But then implies that everywhere else that it just says kaf, it means right hand. Well, I'm a violated Lufe. The Gemara says, no, you can't derive that. It may be saying that here specifically it's the left hand. In the case of the Mitzvah, you have to use the left hand. It doesn't necessarily tell you that any other hand is the right hand. Maybe yes, maybe no. So my answer is Smoli Zachrinaxi. No, you know what? About the Mitzvah, it uses the term left hand twice. Okay. So one time I would say, okay, that's Lagufe. That's to just teach you the law of Mitzvah. But when it says again the left hand, it means only this one needs the left hand. But otherwise, it would a regular kaf could mean the right hand. So the Gemara says, now wait a minute. And you would say that you have two limiting phrases. In other words, it says twice left hand only. That would tell you that that you should use that you could also use the right hand. So the answer is you know what? It says a third time about mitzvah. It says kapoa smallis, kan smallis ve'nachar smallis. That one, third one teaches you that only this one requires the left hand. A general kaf could be the right hand. Viema Adarabba, the Gemara says, no, you can still say the opposite. Ma kan smalis, af bialma nami smalis. Maybe it's coming to teach you a klal, right? Teaching you that whenever I say kaf, I mean left hand, right? Like you could understand it either way. You could understand it that by saying left hand, it's in trying to apply a general rule that any kaf is the left hand. Whereas is arba small. But guess what? There's another time. It's about the mitzvah. It says four times kapoh smalis, trei ba'ani, utrei ba'ashir. It's like there's two possible situations for a mitzvah, right? There's the wealthy, well-off mitzvah who brings um, um, who brings a more significant offering, and the poor one just brings a mincha. Um, 1 second.
It says trei ba'ani v'trei ba'ashir.
Yeah. Um,
So that's arba.
right. So there's four. So the fourth one is it teaches you that yes, this one is the left hand. The Masorah use the left hand, but any other time it says kaf, it means the right hand. Okay, I think it's a good place to stop for today.
Well, does the Gemara? I'm curious here. Does the Gemara, with regard to this inyan, does the Gemara ever deal with itar yad?
Hmm. Um, Great question. I don't know. You mean about the Mitzvah or about the Mincha?
I guess it maybe by
The
either
Mincha.
one. By the
Great
mincha, I'm
question.
thinking primarily by the mincha.
Well, first of all, is a left-handed Kohen, can he do the Avodah? I think
I don't know
about
the
the
answer to that.
I think that's a disqualification, if I'm not mistaken. So then that wouldn't come up. So the left-handed Kohen would not be doing the Avodah.
Is that correct? Is that?
I'd have to check. That's what I recall, but I'm not certain.
And if he's ambidextrous?
Don't know. I would imagine an ambidextrous person is treated as a right-handed person, and so he has to do it with with the hand that everybody else uses. If he's supposed to do it with the left hand, he should use the left hand. And if
So
he's
I mean,
supposed,
Bisman Azeh, can a left-handed Kohen do Birkat Kohanim? I mean, is he prohibited? When
mm,
we talk about the
so
avodah, I mean,
yeah, I don't know if you have to be. What about a balmum? Can a balmum do bir pasquale?
a balmum. How do we define a balmum today? I
Uh,
mean, it's an open definition. I mean, what is a person that had surgery and is missing the gallbladder? Is that a balmum? I mean,
um,
I don't know
I don't know. I have no idea. Usually, a mum is something that's visible. I think.
I do remember an interesting story that Rav Moshe Feinstein was in the hospital, and apparently he
Yeah,
was going to have a pacemaker,
yeah.
and he called his son-in-law, Rav Tenler, and he said, "Listen, if I have a pacemaker, will I be considered a Balmum?" Now he wasn't a
And
Cohen.
what was the answer?
I don't know. I don't know the answer. I remember the question.
And what's the relevance if he wasn't a Cohen?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I remember hearing that story years ago. I mean,
Yeah, so these are all good questions. I'm not sure about the answers, but
one minute.
that's what I recall. Okay,
Okay.
have a good day, everybody.